you That's why. Because I had to reset my laptop, it disconnected my entire thing, so... Oh well. Scuff has happened. Might explain why. Yeah, the last update kinda screwed my laptop. Quite a bit. I had to disconnect everything. If I was talking, the scuff, yep. It happens everywhere, it happens every time. I've been yammering to myself for the last... ...45 minutes with nothing insightful to say. Oh well, none of it matters. Most of it's just rambling and talking about assholes and farting and whatever. Oh no. There's Pokemon battles in here as well. Thank you, Bruce, like you have saved me from the scuff. Now I just want to go home. Well, that's the thing, like, I just miss my setup. I miss it so much. And this laptop has it. Yeah, I mean, it's... I'm looking for healing at the moment. Hello, may I help you? No. You may not help me. You can never help me. Give me a toy. Oh, so that's where that starts. This particular item that just becomes a toy in the later games. I'm so used to it being just the doll. Like Earthbound's teddy bear. But you. What have you got? You have balls. Many balls. Like, the doll is one of the things that I always, like, associate with it, especially considering that the TCG, like the original, the Pokemon doll, was actually invaluable for whatever you did. Rich boy only has just enough more cash than the last person I beat up. Oh. There's the big old power moves. So items that I never use at all. More items that I never use. Well, thanks for giving me your tickle charge. Because I know what's gonna... Once we're done with Pokemon, I know what's going to replace it. I think at this point, considering how bad some of the internet outages have been here, I am not going to risk doing Lost Sphere. So I will probably go on to something else. And I've got a lot of more RPGs that I want to do. Got a lot of RPG Maker games. And they're not particularly challenging for the bit rates, so I could probably do those for a little bit. Cancel some of those off of my backlog. I think when I used to do YouTube, I did Sweet Lily Dreams. I got reasonably far with it. I just never finished. But I could do Lisa the Joyful. Because I already did Painful. Like, last year, I think? Painful was an experience. Tell me, Broslack, which ones were you thinking of playing? Ah, yeah, I mean, that's normal. Problem with RPG Maker games is they don't tend to tell you much. Just like, here's this program, like, oh, well, the system, fair enough. Like, my general thing with RPG Maker is I tend to play the games from it. And I am... oh, fuck. Like, it's a certain kind of weird... There's so many fan games and stuff made in it. Like, I think, Lisa the Undone. And there's Lisa the Hopeful. And then you've got, like, a bunch of different things that you can also look at. Like, I have a game called Cubicle Quest. Where did that come from? No fucking idea. Some lazy biker dropped their lemonade. Oh yeah, because I remember Uranium. Pokemon Uranium. And with that heavy sigh, you should realise, yeah, Uranium was a thing. Uranium was just bad. Uranium required you to know competitive Pokemon. Fuck that. It took us 9 years to take this out. It was taken down by Nintendo in 5 minutes. Nuclear power, bad. Pokemon competitive dogfighting capabilities, good. It was more fun to replace the, if you could, you'd always replace the sound, the music files. And it was one of those playthroughs with the music files replaced that got me into Macross 82 to 99. Like, it got me into an entire genre of music. Pokemon must grow up, must grow with us, must become the Care Bears, but with guns. I don't have Repel on, do I? Let's have a look in here. Ah, Bornard. Okay. It's Dark Steel. I was like, okay, that didn't take long to catch all. Color me confused. Oh, one of you. I think I have your tiny cousin. Maybe. No! I was just like... You're assuming that I decide to keep, in my vast head, the knowledge of Pokemon. Also, it wasn't in... I don't think I ever saw one in Y. Or Moon. When I officially gave up. Brothak gets to talk very fervently about about Pokemon. Oh, here comes this. Oh, we've got we've got cats. Oh, discharges everyone. Ooh. Where's my... There it is. Okay, a mechanic they added in when they felt like it. It's not something I would have noticed. That's because... Guarantees the catch. Oh, okay, we've got... Old man doing speech. You're a Dragon Legend? He's a Dragon Quest character. Freed Pokemon? The shit is this? I'll be lonely and sad. I'm with that person. But we also don't see people without Pokemon in this world. Man with a beard and looking like an old-fashioned Texas Ranger. Oh, bye. Gonna do other things. Like, find more body spray. Oh, for the love of God. Not what I wanted to do. This never came back. I can see why already. It's unnecessarily complicated. I have 2 Pokemon in critical. This is going to drive me nuts. Especially when I was looking in a house for something else entirely. Like, I still haven't found a fishing rod. You ask me, okay, Prismatic, where's the fishing rod in Kanto? And I'll say it's Snorlax, Snorlax, Snorlax. Maybe Cinnabar Island. You ask me where it is in Johto, I'll be like, you can find it along the way. You ask me where it is in Hoenn, I'll be like, maybe you want to check a house. You ask me where it is in any of the later ones, I'll be like, throw a fucking rock. Looks like you could try a little hard, you bitch. I have charge. Not from the other world. Ah, screw you. I know most people say, oh, okay, you know, like Black White's the Black White 1 or 2 is the best Pokemon games. And I just sit there going, you know, just gentle nodding and go, I still love Mudkip. Get out of my house. Oh, I want one from White? Oh, that's gross. Encouraging trading. You. Other people. Cuties. Yeah. He says as he's trying to actually get to a meetup. No, don't explain how it works. I already know. You literally find one ages before you get this explanation. Never mind food. Oh, either way, let's make them all wet. He became simple. Behold the single thought in the Samurot's head. Glub glub. Also missing his catchphrase when he was an Oshawott, going, Oshaw, what's up? And then leaving. Okay, bye. Have fun times making creepy eye contact in your house and not being able to go anywhere without rotating your plates. Gym leader is currently at home.
You try my patience. Make your choice.
I hear something. I hear something. Primordial Limit Lilith. Thank you for making a choice and following the channel. Give me those Pokemon. You can take them. You're a different. There's a lot of. Are they that bad? No, I lost in. It's not the fact that I'm someone that kind of fell off Pokemon. That's why. There's no disrespect to people that like Pokemon. I just, after a while, kind of grew out of it. But other than that, how are you? How are you on this fine day? And also, I am English as the driven snow. I will put myself down. Bro Slack will tell you. If he's still here. Wait, where did I lose Iris? There she is. This is a question I will ask, because it's sort of like just flown past my head and I'm thinking about it. Because I know about the other legendary Pokemon. Why his stats? I did not notice that. I was having a moment of like thinking of something else. I've completely just been derailed, but I'm getting it back. The other legendary Pokemon, the Ice type, is it Kyurem? I think that's the one. Like when it gains the the white and black version of Kyurem. Like, is that the unified one or is it not? That's an answer I would like, because I don't know. It is a thing that I am not... is Kyurem. I thought that was the unified one, but obviously I'm not. Okay. That's fine. Container for them. Oh, okay. It's so weird because it makes me think that they're actually, you know, higher up than I think. Like, the original card that I got for this is like, it had someone who was very dedicated to this game, like massively so. They had all of the event Pokemon as well. Floatstone. Ring target. What is this? Okay. And they had, I think the person who played it was like, they had a level 100 Emboar. They had Burning Bacon. Very powerful Burning Bacon. And then they also had they had Kyurem. They had basically all the, I think they even had the had everything that they could actually obtain from the game without trading. I've just had a momentous thought. I have no super effective abilities. None whatsoever. Let's see what's in my bag. My bag of wonders. I'm gonna say I have no ice type moves. Oh, I have one. I have Frost Breath. Well, let's try it then. Motherfucker. Never mind, we are struggle bugging this shit. I should really remove that. But holy fuck, 5,000 points as well. Bulldoze. Like that was such a good use in the foot. Oh, there it is, bulldoze. Like the only reason I had that in there was just to stop people from trying to backseat games when I didn't want them to. It made sense at the time. But some of the games that I've done, like, that rule has gone out the window. It was thingy, Fallout 2, that kind of made me think, yeah, we've got problems on this channel. Especially when I play older games. With like 90% of the time. Well, fuck. Well, she is heavy, let's see. Not quite, but What the hell's Feather Dance? Oh, right. Okay. Always beware of the single Pokemon trainer. Usually has something very powerful. I don't remember when I don't remember when I said. I know there was at some point I've explained that Pokemon just ain't my bag any longer. The only reason I'm playing this is because I want to get off of my backlog. That's, you know, it's a thank you for everyone that follows me. Like, I have many more games that I could be playing, but this was one we hit before I left to Olba. I could played Lunar Nights, or what other DS games I've actually got that I could use this emulator for that isn't Metroid Prime Hunters. I'm gonna check now, actually, now I'm thinking about it. One of the games of all times, it certainly fucking is. It hurts like hell to play, just like Kid Icarus Uprising. And I'm not logged in. I'm actually curious now. Like, Kid Icarus Uprising came with a damn stand. That's how much Kid Icarus Uprising hurt. I could be playing Lufia, or Lunar Genesis, or Mario and Luigi, or Mega Man ZX Advent, or Sonic Chronicles, or Valkyrie Profile Covenant of the Plume, a game I absolutely fucking detest, or Super Robot Tyson OG Saga, which has literally the first few set of dialogues has a comment about someone's tit size, and Xenosaga 1 and 2, if it was translated. I've played Pokemon Ranger. I think I beat most of it and then didn't care. I was done. That was it. Fuck you, Pokemon Ranger. Yes, that's a game that got easier the more entries it had into it. No, there's another game that used to absolutely destroy screens, and that was Trauma Center. If you've never seen Trauma Center, holy fuck. That is a game. Yeah, I think they made one for the Wii. They remade one for the Wii, and then the rest of the series is on DS. And I think there's 3 games for the DS. So I think it's the first one, an expansion to the first one, and then there's a second game, which the second game is almost nigh impossible to find a physical cartridge of any longer. Because trying to think. Oh yeah, it had horrible motion controls. I think it was a update of the first one with the stuff from the second one. Sorry, with the expansion set. Like, it's New Blood is the other one that most people don't play, which I think is also on the Wii. If you want to know that I do see that sort of thing, then yeah. Considering I work as a chef and I have the most shakiest hands in the universe, yeah. Yeah, I love playing games like that. Like, I know my cutting skills are bad. Like if you see me cut a slice of bread, you'll see there's like an angle as as my hand is shaken on the way down. Well, this is the problem. If there was any like jobs in my hometown that I could actually, get back to, you can bet your ass I'll be playing stuff like that. Let's delete that message, because that person followed for all of 5 seconds. I'm not a lefty though, I'm a righty, I just have a hand that does whatever it wants. Plus it doesn't help that part of my thumb tendon is fucked up. Let's make my horse go faster. Oh, you have rust skin, you piece of shit. Wait, what? Look at this. Oh, right. Newsfeed for some reason came up with stuff about Virgin Media. That's how many like different things I can focus my ass on. Because I have to renew my internet package soon and I'm not at home. It's trying to figure out what I want to set it to. So the only way I could get decent internet here is to buy myself a mobile dongle, like one of those 4G ones, and throw it out the window. The only way I could get decent net reception here. But I am looking at other things. Like I'm still in the process of... Because I know someone dearly wanted me last night to come to events. I think I was asked to see if I could come to the streamer meetup next week, or the week after. Can't remember which. I'm looking at how much it costs me to get up from Alba here and getting up to Nottingham. This is where not working for a company that has holdings up north kinda sucks. Because I have been, like, I have tried to get work with Leonardo's like before. The greater problem at the moment for me is that the only work I seem to be seeing is in Southampton, which would put me even further south. I could easily buy a flat in Southampton, which means I'd get the best of both worlds, but it's then finding a job in Southampton. The cheapest way of getting up to Nottingham from here is to leave at 8:10 in the morning. Get into London or Ipswich for about 1 o'clock. And then go to get on the National Express for 9 hours. That would be to get up to Nottingham, and you're looking at still at hundreds of pounds. Hundreds. Yes, I love my northerner cohorts, but fuck me, is it difficult to get up there. As the person, yes, it would. And I almost tried to be a breakfast chef back home for Leonardo's. Apparently I didn't have enough experience. Like, that would just reduce the bill by like maybe 50% just for hotel. It would do nothing else. It would do nothing for anything else. I think the only job I've had any inclination back home so far has been the Marriott's, the Marriott hotel chain. Marriott hotels are not nice, from what I hear. Just that I'll be working a lot less hours than I do currently. Which is a nice, fat, sticky 45. Crunch. Launch is fine. You're an asshole. Sound out by Big Dog with his huge mustache. Damn it. I thought that would work. It's just mustachioed dog that gets bigger and bigger and bigger moustache. Now imagine if it had a mega evolution. Even bigger mustache. Just nothing but mustache. It would just be Altaria, just with mustache. Which is bad for me, because I prefer beards. Point where I've got like half a song memorized by fucking Psycho Stick, which is about beards. Okay, what the fuck is that beard? That is not a man. That is not a man. That is a fucking claw trap. You can do the same again, hyper potion? Yep. Your beard makes your face look square. Well, remember, the world is square. What am I telling you to do? Go play some Final Fantasy. Or Chrono Trigger. It's a good time for Chrono Trigger. Alright, here comes the big boy. You don't need to go any faster. Or maybe you do. Oh shit. Takes stripey speed. I just defeated Angry Dr. Light. Ah, a move you didn't get even used during that battle. It's your favourite move. Don't believe you. I don't know why, like, half the stuff that I'm like, because I've got very limited capabilities here, half the stuff that I'm planning to do for, like, my mainstream has been Mega Man, which is frustrating. That and Castlevania. I've been wanting to do a Castlevania recently. Do you regret starting your Pokemon journey? Yes. I'm not doing Battle Network 6 anytime soon. Fuck that. I've already done 5 this year. So strange. Wait, which one's Route 7? Do I remember what Route 7 is? There. Okay. No idea. Enjoy whatever's going there. That's probably one of the legendary Pokemon, the Jins or something. Ah, bird. See anything of this from like the later ones? Is gaining experience for catching Pokemon. Like that was a smart idea. Oh god, is this Moongrass? Yep, it's a Moongus. Be gone, tiny mushroom. Also do is maybe train something else than this bird. This bird is far ahead enough as it is. Let's take yours. Let's give it to you as well. Although probably gonna absolutely neuter the fuck out of it. Yep, that's split even more, but they need it. We're getting very close to the end of this. This entire thing. Which is good and bad. Good because we get to the end of it. Bad because then I have to think something else to do. I have plans, but it's just, do I want to do them yet? Do I want to play RPG Maker games, or do I want to play Heroes of Might and Magic 2 or something bonkers like that? Because I want to also play as an FPS, but the internet connection here is not good enough for that. It would literally just be pixel porn. You've been nothing but watching a bowl of porridge on screen. I just killed all the dinosaurs. Please leave me alone. Now I can send this one out. So I think this must be a big old spider. No, it's an eel. Well, shit. Oh, you're one of those. Oh, you're the little tiny sperm fish becomes. I have no idea what this Pokemon is. Apparently it's weak to flying. I feel like my team is too low level to even be on this road. Like, at all. Ah, Craiganal, my old friend, how heavy you are as you bend. No. You just give it a rest, Sharon. Just throw yourself off this bridge, right? You know, you're done. You're spent. Not a force to be reckoned with. Behold, bird fight. Where is it? It's just normal, isn't it? I thought it was I thought it was something completely different. You're not great at this. Just allow me to telegraph which Pokemon I'm using, rather than just throwing the ball at your head. You still have the same 4 Pokemon you started with, and now one looks like a prat. And somehow incredibly speedy, despite the fact that it's got no legs. He's getting a lot better at this. Send your overpowered bullshit out second. Yeah, you know, my streams are like the most lurk friendly. Don't worry, if it's like I know. Pee myself, actually. Completely forgot what I was doing. Mind too focused on one objective. Either murder this man or go empty my bladder. I don't know which one's which at the moment. Would you take a wake up? Slap. Hammer Arm. What the fuck is Hammer Arm? That's a much better... Yeah, I never get Wake Up Slap to be good. Wait, you had a second evolution? Oh yeah, you did. Just been so long I never saw it. It's come big. Oh, thanks for all the max revives. And you gotta give me a little revive. I am actually gonna go pee. I'll be right back. Right, I am back. I have done both things I needed to do. Loaded that man and take a pee. Gonna give you one of the most token appreciative nods. Speaking of the moon grass, there he is. Healing is for jumps. Big jumps. Just like you. You're actually quite big. Oh, you again? Well, I'm getting the fuck out of here. Real item. And another one. Dawnstone. Where's Mogo? No, no, you are silly bleeding. You're an admiral hiker, not a fisher. And here's Boldor with his very sturdy capabilities. Oh no, it was all for an item. Oh, there's... Really? Rural TMs? No, not fly. Duskstone. Oh, that's how that becomes Chandelier. Okay. That makes sense. Maybe. Also, Eevee. Because there's no day-night cycle, that might explain quite a lot. Oh, Bouffalant. Don't ask me why I know about this. It's a Taurus with hair. The afro commands everything to go. I do not want to be caught. You bastard. And then here's another baby vulture in his underwear. Ah, there's a deer. Sawsbuck. No, I know what this is, just not certain. quite. Yeah, it's you. It's the royal jellyfish. Here comes Icicle Bear. There goes my bird. I don't know if this gains steel typing. Because I knew what this was. No, it doesn't. But it somehow knows aerial ace, so let's hit it with a rock. Oh, Seismitoad. So it goes Timpole, Palpitoad, and then Seismitoad. How big is this fucker? Oh, it's this big, fucker. And it knows fighting moves. Motherfucker, I will bite you. It knows Earthquake. It was a real fight. Oh, never mind. You're too slow. Why would you want to know agility? You're too fucking fast. It's incredibly elaborate for what it is. And also, you would, unlike, like, Generation 1 and maybe 2, there's no actual physical way of getting here that early. So I don't know why they would need to put this block in. So the story necessitates that you go and do everything in it. Makes little sense to me. When it became strictly linear, you couldn't really break it that much. This sort of formality, not required. Have you got a fucking Pokemon Center? If I got a set of rocks between... Oh, I've got the actual Victory Road to do. My Pokemon are pretty beat up, which is kind of a problem. Ah, an ant. Made of steel. And here's a dragon. And yet another one of those of, do you think you can get out of this cave unmolested? Dark Dragon. So I finally have a dragon type. I might swap that one in. Yeah, I've only got 3 alive. That's not great. Okay, where's my bike? It won't let me do anything. You can't even use that. It's like they're going to yield the most difficult and most agonizing thing they could possibly do. Who to replace though? I would like a dragon type for thingy. You know, for the league. But I don't know if I'm actually gonna be able to do that. Okay, let's see who is online. So many people. Actually, there was someone I might be able to raid around. I also want to get a preview, but it's Twitch. Right, I'm gonna go raid Stonewolf and Herpderp, who I tend to have a lot of interactions with in another Discord. They're currently playing Vermintide 2 to celebrate Herpderp's affiliate anniversary, so we'll do that, and I'll see you tomorrow for Card and CL. Thank you very so much for watching. Good night.